Morning. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya wa mursaleen. نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Welcome to beginning classical Arabic. Saturday morning, June 26th. Let's get to it. We're in a lesson that is introducing a couple things to us. The larger focus is on the feminine, right? We're dealing with both feminine nouns and with, as we will see in the second half of the dialogue, feminine verbs. We're going to get our first taste of conjugation and conjugating verbs today, inshallah ta'ala. But last class, we also took a nice long detour into the world of Arabic morphology, known as sarf, because it came up. And so we kind of just did a little bit of work to put that on our radar to realize that when we learn verbs, these verbs can have different moods, let's say, or they can have different inflections. And there are 10 different patterns of inflection or mood that verbs can have. And they are regular in the sense that, as we saw, the first form was with no doubled letters, with no additional letters to the root stem, which is made up of 3 letters almost always. And the second form, so let's see, I'll just do a little very, very brief recap. By the way, when it comes to morphology or anything like that, Arabic loves to use fa'ala as like its prototypical example, right? Which is the verb to do. So you see here the verb conjugated for the third person singular past tense, literally he did, fa'ala. This is form 1. What makes it form 1 is that it has no additional letters. This is the root stem reduced to its bare minimum, okay? And every other verb form has to do with adding something onto the root stem. So we saw the second form was adding a doubled middle letter. Fa'ala. Right? Everything else stays the same, except now the second letter is doubled. Fa'ala. And just that tiny change has major consequences. There are 3 different meanings to the second verb form, as we discussed last class. One of them is that it implies something that's done repeatedly, like over and over and over and over again. The other connotation is that it's something that is done with force and with intensity, right? We gave the example of to break versus to shatter. And the third type of meaning that's communicated by this form is something that is intransitive, meaning a verb that does not affect another object. Now, all of a sudden, it affects another object. So jalasa, right, to sit is an intransitive verb. It does not have an object. All of a sudden becomes jalasa, to make someone sit, right? Now it takes an object. So these are the 3 meanings that are communicated by this second form, and there are 10 forms, and each form has its own meanings associated with it. And within each form, we make different words. So the doer, the fa'il, is going to look a certain way in form 1. The maf'ul is going to look a certain way in form 1, and it's going to look different with a verb in form 2. Yes, if you're looking for examples in the Quran, كذب وتولى, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is significant when it comes to aqidah, actually. The difference between كذب or كذب, a form 1 verb, to lie, and كذب, which Allah uses much more frequently in the Quran to describe those who reject faith, because كذب with a doubled middle letter means to deny, not just to lie. That's not a one-time event. It means to deny over and over and over again. And therefore, there's an implication that this is something that is recognized, that this is something that someone knows to be true and yet denies, 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 denies. Right? So you see that there's implications when it comes to these sorts of things. Very good. Okay, but that was just our little foray into morphology. I obviously advocate introducing morphology at an early stage. Some people, and they advocate introducing morphology after you've done a lot of Arabic grammar, which to me, I wish that I had been taught morphology, or at least a little bit of it earlier, because it helps you organize the language in your head, and it helps you learn more words more quickly. So that being said, let's move on to try to progress with our conversation here. And we will stop here and there to point out various things. We've reached wa'aina ummuki. Let's have, so we have star 1 and star 2. Sister Arum, is your husband there as well today?
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, great. So both of you, let's do it. One of you be star 1 and one of you be star 2.
Star 1 and star 2. Okay, I'll start with first. Aina ummuki?
هي أيضا هنا.
أيضا توات है.
هي أيضا هنا.
هنا.
هي طبيبة في مستشفى الولادة. مستشفى الولادة.
Excellent. Nice job. Keep going.
ومن هذه الفتاة التي معك؟ أهي أختك؟
لا هي بنت عمي.
ما اسمها؟
اسمها فاطمة.
Very good. Let's pause there for a second just to point out a couple of things. So it's fairly straightforward. وأين أمك? Where is your mother? هي أيضا هنا. She also is here. Remember هنا and هناك, here and there. هي طبيبة. She is a doctor. جملة اسمية. مبتدأ خبر. في مستشفى الولادة. That was very good job. Our brother Muhammad Tariq, he ran the fa right into the lam, because this is a hamzatul wasl, and so we're not going to pronounce it. And this ends with an alif, right? Mustashfa, which is a hospital. But we have something interesting here. We have mustashfa, and then we have a word after it. Mustashfal wiladati. Okay. I want someone to try to answer a grammatical question about this. What's the relationship between these two words, mustashfa and al-wilada? Are we looking at sifa mawsuf? Are we looking at mudaf mudaf ilay? Are we looking at mubtada khabar? Are we looking at preposition and prepositional phrase, jar and majrur? And how can we tell? Yes, Sister Musarrat.
So I think it's mudaf mudaf ilayh.
You would be correct. Why? How can you tell?
The first word is marfu and the second one is majroor.
The first one, is that what you said?
Yeah, it's got a dhamma. The second one has a kasra.
Where's the dhamma at in mustashfa?
Oh, you're right, because that's a hospital. Okay. Okay. But anyway, if it was an adjective, it would have matched in being definite, right?
That's
which it didn't. So I ruled it out.
Yeah.
And then so I think it's mudaf.
MashaAllah. That's the answer we're looking for. Remember our principles when it comes to mudaf ilay. The first word, the mudaf, the thing that is possessed, it can be anything. It can be dhamma, it can be kasra, it can be fatha. It all depends on where it is in the sentence, right? The second part that complicates things is that this word is mustashba with an alif, which makes it mabni, that you can't really even tell. It's not going to show you. It's not going to change. There's no dhamma, there's no kasra, there's no fatha that's apparent on the word. The third thing is that it comes right after fi. And so even though we can't tell from the word itself, this is actually fi mahalli jar. This is actually in the genitive case because it comes after a preposition. But the big thing, if you're wondering what's the relationship between these two words, you have to look at this one has no alif lam and no tanween, and this one has alif lam, which is a dead giveaway that it can't be sifa mawsuf. Sifa mawsuf, we said it has to agree in 4 things. One of those 4 things is if one has alif lam, the second one has to have alif lam. If one of them has tanween, the other one has tanween, right? Which is not the case here. We have the first word, which has no alif lam and no tanween, and the second word has an alif lam. That is a textbook case of mudaf, mudaf ilay, possessor and possessed, right? Now you could say, wait a second. How is the hospital being possessed by al-wilada? First of all, what is al-wilada? Wilada comes from the 3-letter root walad, which we've learned before is child, right?
The maternity hospital.
Exactly, very good, excellent. So wilada is maternity, okay? This type of word is called a masdar. We will study it in more depth later. Masdar has to do with the noun. It's a type of noun that refers to either a gerund or something like that, something that is the quality, right? Like maternity, right? So even though we call this mudaf, mudaf ilay, possessor, possessed, it's not so much that the maternity owns the hospital in the sense of this is my pen, I own it, but rather that this is a relationship of exclusivity, right? Or specialization. We call this in Arabic ikhtisas. So the mudaf ilayh, the one thing that's important to realize here is that it's not always just about ownership in the sense of human property, right? It can also be about a specific use, right? This is the maternity hospital, meaning that this hospital is only used for maternity. It's not used for other sorts of medicine, etc., etc. Right? So that's something that's a subtle point to make about mudaf mudaf ilayh. Yes, is there a question?
So that's like Rasulullah. Rasulullah. Isn't it the same thing?
Say again, sorry.
Isn't that like Rasulullah? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's good. Like Baytullah, right? Right. So if we have like Baytullah, Rasulullah, right? All these sorts of things. Is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns the messenger or owns the house, the Kaaba? In one sense,
Yeah, but
that's true. But the more apparent meaning, or we maybe would say the more relevant meaning, is that it's about specificity, right?
yeah, like Khalifa to Rasul, like right? The
Yes,
Khalifa. That would
right.
be
Exactly.
a relationship of not ownership, basically.
Yes, exactly. Is that he is specific to this thing, right? Khalifatul Rasul, he is the messenger's Khalifa, right? Specific to that thing, right? So you can see now that we can use this construction for all sorts of other uses, right? The College of Medicine, right? The College of Engineering, etc., etc. Very, very good. Hiya tabibatun.
Um, so
Yes.
when we say things like United Kingdom, is that the same construction?
Good. So when it comes to the United Kingdom, so united is directly describing the kingdom, right?
So that's an adjective.
That is an adjective that it would be al-mamlaka what do they call it? Al-Muttahida. That's what they call it. Al-Mamlaka.
Oh, so that's an adjective. What about the USA?
Same thing. Al,
Oh,
they say, what do they say? Al-Wilayat, the states, the United States, right? So this is interesting because we don't think about these things in our native language, but there is a subtle difference between ownership or specificity or exclusivity versus something directly describing something, right?
but United States of America is not.
All of America, yeah. That's the part that's possessed,
Uh-huh.
right? But when it comes to United States, it's not the United of States, or it's not that you know, being united is exclusive to the states. No, this is a description
No.
of the states.
So, but then is that off part? Is that the same construction?
It is al-Wilayat al-Muttahida al-Amrikiyya, the United States. That's interesting. So in Arabic, they would literally word by word translation. They say the American United States.
So
So
they actually made it an adjective.
they did make it an adjective, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whereas our construction in English is possessive. United States is sifa mawsuf, and then of America is mudaf ilayh, right? And they do the same thing with the United Kingdom. They say al-Mamlaka al-Muttahida al-Britaniyya, right? The British United Kingdom, literally. That's interesting. Yeah. So it's a subtle difference. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important one to know. Are we talking about an adjective and the thing it describes, or are we talking about a relationship of possession? And it has consequences. Yeah.
Okay, so this is unrelated. So in Arabic, is Britain not great?
United Kingdom. They don't call it Great Britain. No, they don't. They call it United
Okay.
Kingdom. El Azim. No. I've never heard that said in Arabic. So Great Britain is self praise, and
Then the Arabs got it right.
the Arabs don't confer that praise onto it. Very good. Okay, so the second thing to point out here, and again, like in your mind, just file this away. Al-wilada from walad. We're going to come back and talk about issues of how you derive these types of nouns from verbs, but that's for a later lesson. وَمَنْ هَذِهِ الْفَتَاةُ. This is a new word that's similar to one we learned before. Before we had al-fata with an alif on the end, and that was a young man. Now we learn that if we want to make a young woman, we simply add a ta marbuta at the end. However, that adding a ta marbuta at the end necessitates that we change the type of alif that we're using, and our alif now stands up instead of sits down. Al-fatatu with a ta marbuta at the end is a young lady. Teenage years, right? Maybe early 20s, right? Basically that age range. وَمَنْ هَذِهِ الْفَتَاةُ الَّتِي. Right? So how are you going to be able to discern between, is it a young man or a young lady? There's a couple ways. First of all, هذه versus هذا. That should clue you in. And then when we link it up with other words, if we take the same sort of sentence, وَمَنْ هَذَا الْفَتَى الَّذِي, right? If you're running al-fata into alladhi, you're going right from the ta to the lam, because you're not going to pronounce this its full way, and you're going to jump over the hamzatul wasl. Fatalladhi, right? However, here now it's going to become apparent because we have a ta marbuta, so it's wa man hadhihi al-fatatu allati. Allati, I can't remember if we've had this word before, is the corresponding feminine form for alladhi. So alladhi is a relative pronoun, he who, the one who. Allati is the corresponding relative pronoun for she who, the one who. Notice that ta sounds are very tied up in Arabic with femininity, right? The difference between fatah and al-fatah is the ta marbuta. We already learned that when it comes to nouns, the ta marbuta indicates a feminine noun, right? Now we have the difference between alladhi and allati is again, the ta. The ta represents a feminine aspect. And later on in this lesson, we're going to see that it also carries over to verbs. That in order to conjugate something into the feminine, we're going to be using ta. So if you see ta, you're thinking majority of the time it has something to do with femininity. وَمَنْ هَذِهِ الْفَتَاةُ الَّتِي مَعَكِ, and who is this young lady who is with you? أَهِيَ أُخْتُكِ, is she your sister? لا, هي بنت عمي. This is in English, we say this in an easier way, my cousin, right? And that saves us from having to remember who's is it maternal or paternal, or is it, but in Arabic there is no one word for cousin. It's a mudaf ilay construction that clarifies who it's from. Is it from the paternal side or the maternal side? So bintu ammi, ammun is paternal uncle, as we learned before. Ammi is my paternal uncle. Bintu ammi, literally the daughter of my paternal uncle, which is how they say cousin, right? So we've seen that some things are easier in Arabic compared to English, and some things are more difficult. This is one of those things that's more difficult. Bintu ammi, bintu khali, ibnu ammi, ibnu khali, right? These are your cousins. Good. And then we had mesmuki, and that was well done here, skipping over the skipping over the hamzatul wasl to the scene. Mesmuha, ismuha, we pronounce it because it's the first part of our speech. Ismuha Fatimatu. Excellent job. Anyone have any questions up until now before we keep going? Okay. Let's have Sister Musarrat and Sister Sahar continue on from Azamilatuki hiya.
Who's me first? Or
Whoever wants to. It's up to you.
okay. Azamilatuki hi.
You want me to translate it?
Nope. I want you to be person with 2 stars. So answer la and a few.
Oh, okay. So, can I see the question again?
Oh yeah, the question was Azamilatuki hiya.
So, I do understand that. Oh, okay. I have to answer from the. Okay. So, la, ana, أنا في المدرسة okay. لا أنا في المدرسة متوسطة
Good.
في المدرسة الثانوية.
Excellent. Good. So those are some questions. You can write them quick. Okay. Keep going, you two, and we'll point out some stuff later. So back to Sister Musarrat. What's the next question?
Oh, sorry. Alaki uktun.
لا ما لي أخت.
Alaki akun.
نعم لي أخ كبير وهو طالب بالجماعة.
Good. Stop there. Okay, excellent. So one thing to look out for, and this is tricky, right? Jami'ah versus jama'ah. What's the difference? Go ahead, Sahar.
Jamia is just the university, and bil jamiati, with the university.
That's completely correct, but that's not what I'm asking. You said
Oh,
وهو طالب بالجماعة instead of جامعة. And so I'm trying to
oh,
look at the placement of the alif. Here the alif comes right after the mim. And then the
yeah.
word جماعة, the alif comes right after the mim.
Mm,
So what's the difference between these two words?
um,
It's good that you mix them up because it shows us that they come from the same root, mim, mim, ain, which means to gather, means to gather together, right?
okay.
And so Jami'a, as we know, means university, and Jama'a, which is on our tongues because of all of the hadith, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'a, right, is the masses or the grouping, the group, right? You can say a Jama'a is a group of people. You can walk up to a group of people and say, Ya Jama'a, hey, you group of people, right? So it's a very subtle difference between these two. And a further proof of how interesting it is to learn one root and then be able to kind of spin off multiple words from that root. Okay, let's rewind a little bit and I guess, why don't we ask to translate for us? So go ahead, go back and translate from the beginning.
Is she your colleague, I guess, or classmate? Is she your classmate?
Good.
So my book actually has this as Ahia Zamilatuki.
Uh-huh.
So what would be why would one use one over the other?
Which two things are we comparing?
So your book has it as Azamilatuki, and my book has it as Ahia Zamilatuki.
Oh, good. That would just differentiate emphasis, right?
Yeah.
So
Is she your classmate
right.
as
So
compared to?
I would say that this one is a little bit better because if we say hiya zamilatuki, it could be understood as, is it she who's your classmate? It's,
Okay.
it's almost as if you were talking about a classmate and now you're
Right.
trying to place her, right?
Right.
Because the
Okay.
principle with Arabic questions is that we advance to the front of the sentence the exact thing that we're asking about, right? Which isn't really, that doesn't really fit the context here. Really, the context, um, we know who she is because we've been talking about her, and we want to know, is she also your classmate, right? So your classmate, is she, right? We want to focus in on whether she's your classmate or not.
Right.
Okay, so then the response, go ahead and try to translate that.
So it says, no, I am in the middle school and she is in the high school.
Fantastic. I'm going to take it 1 second and break this down. So we have, first of all, okay, question to the jama'ah, okay? What's the relationship between these two words? Al-madrasa, al-mutawassita.
Sifa Mawsum.
Okay, how can you tell?
They're matching.
Matching with what?
Everything.
Everything. Everything, letter, no, yeah, the four things, right? So we have alif lam, feminine, feminine. This is kasra, this is kasra. And what's the last thing? Singular, singular. Yes, the four things: number, gender, grammatical case, and definiteness. Right? It matches in those four things. There's no other possibility. It has to be the promotion, which makes sense because we're not talking about a relationship of possession or exclusivity. We're talking about something that's described in the school. Yeah, what was your question?
Isn't literally translated, wouldn't this be secondary school?
The literal translation of al-madrasati thanawiyati is secondary school, yes, because thana comes from two, right?
Yeah.
So that's completely right. I colloquially translated here as high school because in America we use the word high school much more than we say secondary school. The middle school is literally translated because the root wow being means the middle of, right? Allah Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran for us to be ummatun, a middle ummah, right? We have the wusta, which is the middle finger, right? And then all these,
Aqida wasafiyya. Oh no, that's wasifiyya. That's different. Right?
right? So we have, so this is the root. It has to do with something that in the middle. So mutawassitatu, or in this case al mutawassitatu, is middle school, and we'll delay to a later lesson how exactly we're deriving that form from the root. Good.
Do you have a brother?
Yes.
No, I don't have a brother.
Do you have a sister?
Okay.
First
Are
question.
we doing the first one? Okay. So the first one is about the sister.
Yes, the first question is about the sister. The second one's about the brother.
Did I get it? Did I say the other way around?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No worries.
So for the brother, it's yes. I have a big brother, elder brother, who is the student in the university.
Very good. He is a student in the university, or he is a university student, whatever we want to say. That's all correct. Notice we do use kabir here, just like we do in English. Big brother, older brother, same thing. Li akhun kabirun wa huwa talibun bil jamiati.
So he's actually not a university student. He's a student at university, right?
Yes, literally yes. Okay, any other questions up until this point?
No.
Okay, let's go to, how many sayyids do I have today?
Both.
We got both of them. Okay, so let's one of you be one star and one of you be the other one, and we'll finish off. You guys can finish off the dialogue.
Go ahead, start.
You start.
Okay. ومن هذا الطفل الذي معك؟
Good.
هو ابن أخي أو أخي. Sorry.
Good.
ما اسمه؟
اسمها سعد. سعد.
أفي البيت أمك الآن؟ No. عانى.
Yep, good job.
لا ذهبت إلى المستشفى.
Yes, you got it. Excellent job. Okay, let's translate. Okay, so go back and do the same thing and try your best to translate.
And who is this child that's with you?
Yes, exactly.
He is of brother. No.
Yes, so we would say in English, my
Brother.
nephew.
Yeah.
The son of my brother is my nephew. Arabic says, no, we want to be more specific than that. So it's going to be the son of my brother.
Brother. Okay.
What is his name?
His name is
Saad.
Good.
And his house is Baiti Ummaki. I don't know what Ummaki means, but it's in front of
Good.
Sar.
Is mother. So ummuki.
Okay.
Your mother.
Yeah, so his house is in front of mother's house. Or
Close. What's the preposition? Are we talking about in front of, or are we talking about something else here? Zone in on the very, very beginning of the sentence. Afil beiti. What does fi refer to?
Oh, in.
Yeah. Okay, so what on earth does that mean?
That's more confusing.
Right? Right, because if you're translating from English, this is extremely confusing, right? Literally, word by word, is in the house your mother right now? Right? That's word by word.
Yes.
What we would say, is your mother at home right now?
Yes.
Right. And then Syra, go for the response, and then we'll break some down.
Okay.
No, she went
Yep.
Hospital.
to the hospital.
Yeah, I think.
She went to the hospital.
Yes, she went to the hospital.
No, the
Very,
hospital.
very-
Sorry, I didn't know the word.
No, very good, very good, very good. Excellent job. All right, fantastic. Let's see what there is to learn here. وَمَنْ هَذَا الطِّفْلُ. Okay, الطِّفْلُ has to be with a dhamma because it is part of the jumla ismiya, مبتدأ خبر. وَمَنْ هَذَا الطِّفْلُ الَّذِي مَعَكِ. Who is this? And we said that tifl is used for like a baby. Usually. Toddler, okay, no problem. وَمَنْ هَذَا الطِّفْلُ الَّذِي مَعَكِ هُوَ ابْنُ. If we're reading it with paying attention to the rules of Hamzatul Wasl, we're going to run it right into the ba in ibn. هُوَ ابْنُ أَخِي. He is my brother's son. Mesmuhu. Remember that the possessive pronoun who is fixed. Right? Mesmuhu, what is his name? Ismuhu, his name is Sa'ad. And this is where it gets interesting, as we found. Afil bayti ummukil ana. All right, let's break this down here. Let's forget al-ana because that's a preposition of time. So those things we can just tack them on at the end or wherever we want them. To straighten out this sentence, let's take away the question word as well. Let's make it into an affirmative statement. An affirmative statement, it would be ummuki, supposed to be a dhamma, ummuki fil bayt. And that's fairly straightforward. I think everybody can follow that. Right? Your mother is in the house. So how did we get from here to what's in the dialogue? Okay. Let's turn it into a question first. If we turn it into a question, it would be ummuki fil bayt. However, recall what we just said a second ago, that in Arabic, we are emphasizing the part that we're asking about in the front of the sentence. So there's a difference between ummuki fil bayt or fil bayti ummuki. Same exact words, different emphasis. We want to know something slightly different. If we say ummuki fil bayt, that means that we're really, really interested in who is in the house, right? Somebody's in the house, we're not sure who it is, and we want to know. And so the thing that we want to know most is going to be right next to our question word. Ummuki fil bayt? But that doesn't fit the context here. That's not what the speaker is trying to get at. The speaker doesn't care about who's in the house. The speaker wants to know, where is your mother? And there's an assumption that maybe she might be in the house. And so what's asked instead is, afil bayti ummuki? Is your mother in the house? Or as we would say colloquially in English, is your mother at home? And then al-an is just tacked on at the end. Al-an meaning now. Is your mother at home now? Right? Does everybody understand the difference between those two questions?
So you said the one that we are emphasizing should be right next to the question.
Yes. The one that's in doubt, I should have said. That's even better. The thing that's in doubt, the thing that we want to know, should be right next to the question word.
So our original question has bait. So is it we are emphasizing in the house?
Yeah.
I can see the doubt there. Fil bait has to do with the location, right? So if you think about it like this, what's in question is the location. We have two things. We have person, location. Which one do we want to know? Do we want to know, it's like in scientific experiments, right? We have to keep all the variables the same and just change one variable, right? So we have to choose which variable are we going to keep the same and which one are we going to test, right? So we have like person, location. Do we want to assume the location and ask about the person, which would be a'ummuki fil bayt? And then imagine that we're going to keep on, imagine somebody answered no and just no. Imagine all the follow-up questions. What would be the appropriate follow-up question to a'ummuki fil bayt? La. A'abuki fil bayt? La. A'ukhtik fil bayt? Right? Do you see what I'm saying? That we could keep asking questions about who is in the house. We're keeping the houses assumed, and the identity is what's going to change because it's unknown, right? The opposite, and what we're trying to do here, is we're assuming the identity because that's the person we're really interested in, but the thing that's in doubt, the thing that needs to be questioned, that needs information regarding, is the location, right? So what if we were just given the response no? What would be the follow-up questions? Afil beiti ummuki? La. Afil mustashfa ummuki? La. Afi shari ummuki? La. Afi sayara ummuki? La. Right? So we would keep on changing the thing that we're asking about until we zero in on the piece of information that we're looking for. So perhaps maybe the way I expressed it was counterintuitive, but hopefully does that make it any more clear?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you for asking.
So saying afil bayti ummuki is the same as saying aina ummuki, and saying ummuki fil bayt is the same as saying man fil bayt.
Yes, fantastic. Very, very good. The only difference is that this type of question shows that it's not just a completely open-ended question. We have an idea of where she's likely to be, right? Or if in the other type of question you mentioned, we have an idea of who it is. And that's what we have in this entire dialogue, is that the speaker is always has an idea. Is this your sister? Is this your brother? Right? Instead of who is this? I mean, there's a couple who like open-ended questions, but often we see that the speaker has an idea and turns it into a yes or no question based off of their assumption. And then the assumption turns out to be either right or wrong. So that's a very good point. It's the same as the difference between man hada or aina, right? So in this case, what we really want to know is aina ummuki al-an. And we have an idea that she might be at home. And so we ask, afil bayti ummuki al-an. Very good. And the response, la dhahabat ila al-mustashfa. Very good. This is the last most important thing to learn for this lesson, is the conjugation of verbs in the past tense, right? We said that verbs have 2, 3 tenses. Not really. Okay, it depends on, there's a whole issue in grammar if the imperative is an actual tense or whether it's a mood, quote unquote, but whatever. Okay, Arabic verbs have 3 tenses: past, present, command, or past, present, imperative. The base form from which the other 2 are derived is the past, which is why we're working on past tense verbs almost exclusively here. Past tense is called the madi in Arabic. Okay, the madi, something that has passed. Okay, our base form of the verb is conjugated for third person singular, masculine, fa'ala, which means he did. Okay, So did is past tense. He is singular, third person, masculine, right? That's the first conjugation that we've learned. What if we want to keep the past tense he did, but make it she did? What if we want to say I did? What if we want to say they did, you did, etc.? This is called conjugation. Changing the verb, keeping the time, the tense of the verb, but changing the verb to reflect who is performing the action. This is called conjugation. So the base form is he, singular third person masculine. And today we're learning the next form, which is singular first person feminine. She did. And as we mentioned before, just like with nouns, the only thing that you're going to do is add a ta. And the difference between verbs and nouns is that nouns usually deal with ta marbuta, whereas verbs deal with this type of ta. Ta maftuha, or whatever you want to call it. So we have fa'ala for he did, fa'alat for she did. The ta has a sukoon on it. Fa'alat. And so we have the verb dhahaba. Dhahaba, he went. Now is dhahabat, she went. La dhahabat ila al-mustashfa. This is a jumla fi'liya. It is a verbal sentence. Dhahabat is the verb. Where's the fa'il? The fa'il is concealed here in the ta, which means hiya. She went. That's the subject or the doer of the verb. Ila al-mustashfa is a prepositional phrase indicating where she went, to the hospital. Mustashfa is majroor, or we should say it's fi mahalli jar. It is in the genitive case, but we can't tell because it ends with an alif. Any questions about anything at all? Once we learn the conjugation pattern, I'm going to teach you a very handy way of practicing. Okay, this is something I taught your children in the Sunday school and how I learned myself. Associating, and this is a very, very good way to build the neurons or the neurological connections, to use our hands and use hand gestures to help cement the conjugation patterns in our minds, right? So if we imagine that when we point a single finger to the right, we're saying he, dhahaba, right? And then if we point multiple fingers to the right, it's like we're saying they, right? If you point directly in front of you, one finger, it's like you singular. If you point multiple fingers in front of you, it's you plural, right? I'm going to teach you that once we learn the other conjugation patterns. But right now, all you have is fa'ala, fa'alat. He did, she did. Any other questions? Okay, good stuff. Great work, everybody. Keep up the excellent work. You're all doing fantastic. And we'll see you next time, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.